this war, and we have to get out of the habit of war. It's more than a habit, it's an addiction. We have to get out of thinking that we must be a military superpower. We must get out of thinking that we must have military bases as we have in 100 countries. Is it possible that having military bases in 100 countries arouses a lot of antagonism? Is it possible that it provokes terrorism when your soldiers and your sails are all over the world, occupying this country and occupying, is it possible? Why do we have to be a military superpower? Why can't it be a humanitarian superpower? Instead of sending planes to bomb, why don't we send planes with food and medicine?
Holy shit, look, it's one of the machines. Looks like it's trapped under something, it's broken or something.
Let's get out of here, we cannot stay.
Hold on a second, let me get my keyboard. I can reprogram this thing.
Doesn't matter, leave
No,
it.
seriously, I can do it. Just give me a second.
Unsuccessful.
One more time.
What is taking so long?
No, I swear to God, I can do this, man. I can do this.
Enemy. I killed Kilo.
Unsuccessful.
Enemy. I killed Kilo.
Cross your
Enemy.
fingers.
Unsuccessful.
Not going to work.
Maybe
Enemy.
this will work.
I killed Kilo.
You have to work.
Enemy. I killed Kilo.
All right, this is the last time.
Enemy.
Reprogramming. Successful.
Yes!
We have to stop wars.
Alright, how's everybody's doing this evening? We got a new episode of Dudes Talking with you. I'm going to call Jimmy Jean and the Epic Journeyman in a minute. Jimmy Jean, of course, from his show Into the Microcosm. We're going to discuss 5G this evening, as well as other ways that the government tries to use non-native EMF frequencies to affect your life, mostly negative, by the way. So let me go ahead and call Jimmy and the Epic Journeyman up. Let's go ahead and get him on the show. Hey, Jimmy. Hold on, Jimmy. Hold on. You're live. Hold on. You'll be live in a minute. All right, now
Okay.
you're live.
Oh, hey, how you doing, John?
Doing good, Jimmy. How you doing?
Fantastic, brother. I couldn't be better.
All right, let me go ahead and add Epic in real quick.
Yeah.
So I was just talking about how we're going to discuss 5G this evening, which you've got a lot of knowledge on that, as well as how the government is using non-native EMF frequencies to affect us.
Yeah. Just to qualify myself a little bit, I worked in the cell phone industry for about 10 years. I built cell sites. I worked with Nextel. So I worked with frequencies between 860 megahertz and 900 megahertz for Nextel transmission. So Nextel's signal didn't penetrate a lot of buildings, and so what they would do is they would install what's called in-building cellular networks, and these are what they do is they take a signal off the roof, they find a cell site, they pull the wireless signal in, they amplify that signal through an amplifier, and they distribute it throughout the building through a series of antennas. So a lot of buildings that are built today are built specifically with these mini cell networks inside the actual buildings where we're working. These antennas are above our heads as we sit in our cubicles, just above the ceiling tiles, blasting signals down. So I did that for a period of time, about 10 years. I migrated away from doing the in-building stuff to doing actual cell sites. I was in charge of 350 cell sites from Redwood City, California, down to San Luis Obispo for Nextel. Nextel worked with a lot of government contracts. Nextel sold a lot of phones to the government. Specifically, Nextel was the only cell phone carrier that had encrypted signal. So we did a lot of work. My company specifically, I owned my own company. I started my company, and I did a lot of work for Nextel. I had a master construction agreement. But the point is that I did a lot of work in government facilities because the government bought up Nextel phones because of the encryption. And so not only did Nextel use them, but then, obviously the police used them, the government used them, so on and so forth. Did that for about 10 years. I ended up getting cancer from working with the signals, working with the power. Because there's quite a bit of power coming out, some of these cell sites. And so I ended up getting stage 4 lymphoma. I had to go through a bunch of treatments. I went through chemotherapy, radiation treatments. I'm still here, obviously. I survived. So it is possible for anyone to survive cancer. It's just a matter of the spin of the wheel. So I don't know why I'm still here, but I am. So in the course of being sick, while I worked with wireless, John, I started out in telecom, so I was already doing phone lines and fiber optic and systems like that. But as I migrated into doing the wireless thing, I was doing it at the very beginning of the cell phone push. So no one really knew much about wireless at the time, and I just kind of landed with some engineers who sort of taught me kind of hand to mouth because they didn't want to teach me everything. Obviously, then what do I need them for?
So before 3G?
Right at 3G. My company
Right at
was
3G,
called,
okay.
Yeah, my company was called 3G Communications. And this was before they had even talked about, no one even knew the Gs. I mean, 3G was something that people in the industry would say, but it really wasn't, out in the public lexicon at the time. So what was funny about that was just I named my company 3G, and everybody in the industry thought they already heard of me. That's how I got my.
That's pretty smart. It's a good way of marketing yourself, brother.
Right, because it was just a ubiquitous term describing nothing, so no one owned it, and so yeah. Anyhow, point is, while I was sick, I did a lot of research because I had a lot of time on my back. It took me a few years to come back from that because I had a lot of nerve damage, but I did a lot of research as a result of it, and to try to find out exactly what happened to me, and so nobody ever told us anything when we were getting into it, and we're working around it. I guess the assumption with everybody is that you just assume that the other guy, that everybody knows what's going on. But for the most part, I don't think many people do know what's going on that are working with wireless stuff until it's too late. And there's a lot. It's a dangerous business just in and of itself because a lot of it does require climbing. So there's not a doubt in my mind what's going on with wireless and why it's out of control in our world today. I was actually very surprised. At one point in my career, after when I was doing the cell sites, I at that point I'd pretty much become an expert at being able to propagate signal and get it where I needed it to be. Because Nextel would hire us to go make stuff work. When they signed with NASCAR, they hired me to go up there and make the phones work in the bathroom at a restaurant in San Francisco where there was no signal. So I was really good at it, and so I had this opportunity with the Monterey school district down here that they were potentially going to put this wireless in the schools, and at the time I was naive because I was like, I didn't want to spend any time on it. I was like, there's no way that the parents are going to let this go through, man. There's no way they're going to let it go through. And you know what? I didn't make a penny off of it. I walked away from it, but lots of people did make a lot of money off of it. And I just want to highlight something because it just happened here recently. There was a school that got upset because Verizon was going to put a cell tower right by the school property. And so somebody got upset about it, and they tried to get them to stop. And so in the course of that, what they found out is you cannot get them to stop. If there's a public utility already there, if there's a pole, a tower, a high power line, whatever it is, they don't need permission, and the city can't say no. Period. The end. You lost. But what was funny about it is like, how many of those parents said, I mean, why is there wireless in that school? Like,
They didn't even think twice about it. They didn't even question it or think of maybe it's not a good idea to put a freaking wireless, a receiver on top of the school. No, it's perfectly fine. I guess the kid, or I guess you're talking about them actually putting Wi-Fi in the schools as well. I guess the kids will have better internet service for the children, right?
That's what I'm talking about, because it's cheaper for the school district to put this. I mean, Epic's here, and he can validate what I'm saying. Is, I mean, the amount of power that you have to put out in order to blast signal through all the classrooms so that everybody gets a good signal on their internet. I mean, we're talking some, that's radiation, man. I mean, if people don't know how food cooks in a microwave, it's because the water molecules bang up against each other and get hot. So what is a human body filled with? Water. Right. Yeah. So this cancer that Ted Kennedy died from? It's a specific cancer. It begins with the letter M. I can't think of it now. But the World Health Organization predicted that I can't even the number was so astronomical, it was mind blowing, of people that are going to get that kind of cancer from having a cell phone up against their head. Now, so 5G was going to come out, because this is how I got here. 5G was going to come out, and so I had all this knowledge and expertise into the 5G. And so a couple of people, Clyde Lewis asked me onto his show. I went on his show. I did a show about 5G. And then as a result of that, a few other people called me and, went on this show and that show, and then ended up doing my own show. But in the course of all that, John, as many times as I've talked about cell phones and the danger of it, no one's going to give up their cell phone. That's the sad and sorry fact of it all.
That is true, Jimmy. And the cancer was a glioma. Was the cancer that Ted Kennedy had. And also, I think you can get if I remember, a non-cancerous brain tumor too. I think it's like an acoustic neuroma too as well. But gliomas are can become malignant, which they did as far as Kennedy. But to like you're saying is I'm as much as you say about cell phones, I mean, I got mine. It's right here. I put it in a safe sleeve, and I turn off everything when I'm not using it, and I wear air tube headphones to try to negate as much as I can of the non-native EMF frequencies penetrating my skull. But I'm still being exposed to it. Even if I wear it and I wear a safe sleeve and it's supposed to block the amount of radiation going into my leg, it's still happening to some degree throughout my body. My body's still absorbing it. I still hold it in my hand. I still use it.
Let me ask you this question: if somebody calls you when it's in that sleeve, can you get a call?
Yeah, because it's not completely protecting. It's only protecting one side. It's only protecting one side of it. So since it's the side that's onto my leg, like I've tested this side with my EMF meter, it's blocked. Right. But the other sides are not blocked. So if I actually put this side in my pocket, it's still nuking my leg.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't. I mean, seriously, because they're your next door neighbor's smart meter and every other wireless device in your house. I mean, I swear to God. I keep
the Wi-Fi off of my house as much as possible, and if my wife tells me to turn it on, and when I do, I have a JD Eco router that uses 2.4 gigahertz. So but I usually keep it off, though, brother. I do my best.
I'll tell you one of the most ripping signals in your house that does damage is those cordless phones that everybody has.
Don't have any. That 6.0 deked is ridiculous.
Nice. Well, I'm glad you don't have any of those things, because I mean those are really some of the worst.
Yeah, 6.0 deked constantly broadcasts. Where in Europe they have eco deked, where it doesn't broadcast when it's in the cradle, but here in the United States it's always broadcasting. Even if it's sitting in the cradle, it's still broadcasting because we don't have eco deked. here in the United States.
Want to know why we don't have it?
It's probably lobby to take out of it, I would assume. It's probably some...
Well, it's because in America we pay for healthcare,
Yeah.
and in Europe the government pays for your healthcare. They don't want you getting sick, so they don't allow GMOs. They don't allow a lot of stuff. But over here, anything goes because it's the they want you in the hospital, man.
Yeah. There is some truth. There is some truth to that. Epic, you got anything to chime in?
Oh man, he is the signal master.
The Epic Journeyman.
You're about to.
Hey, good evening, guys. Good evening. Thanks for the great intro there. How's it going, John, Jimmy?
Doing well.
Yeah.
How you doing, brother?
Oh, good. Well, I don't. I've got this router blasting me right now. Other than that, I'm doing okay, I think. Yeah, the signals we have in the house, I mean, it's pretty amazing. I mean, the Xbox, there's some guy just recently walked around with his meter, right, his EMF meter, and the loudest signal anywhere in the neighborhood was the Xbox.
That's why I have my Xbox in a mesh Faraday cage, and my son has to use wired controllers to use it.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually pinging while it was off. That's the wild thing,
Yep.
And people have no idea, that kind of thing. But the issue we have with this 5G, part of it's a misnomer because they're able to call what's not really 5G. 5G, they call it sub-6, right? So it could be 5.9 gigahertz, but it's not really, what they're opening up in the millimeter waves. Millimeter waves are the higher stuff, the 20, the 40, that kind of stuff, right? But it's coming. It's all here, and those towers being 250 feet away, because they have to be so close to each other to broadcast the signal, because there's no, to get them to go farther than that, you have to crank them up. But if you crank them up and you're right next to them, you're in trouble, right? So they have to do that. But it's amazing to me that they pushed it through like they did. I mean, last administration into this administration, it started in the Obama administration with their FCC chairman, whose name escapes me right now. He had that big talk on his outgoing conference on his way out the door, talk about how important 5G is. We're not going to slow it down with research. I'm sure you've seen that. It's an amazing video clip if you get a chance, because it's too damn important, Well, why aren't we going to test it first? Well, exactly. It can't be that important, right? I mean, my movies are perfectly fine right now, right? Yeah, but because it's not about movies. It's not about movies. But then Trump, full on, just gave it the clear, go, escalated even more with his administration. And the guy with the big coffee cup.
You talk about Ajit Pai. He's Trump's current.
Yeah.
And right. I think the one for Obama's last name was Wheeler, but I can't remember his first name.
You're right. That's right, Wheeler.
But yeah,
Bob Wheeler. Right.
Remember, if anybody here is trusting the plan, Trump is not going to make 5G any safer. That's impossible. At least from the world order standpoint, they're not going to, use any positive frequencies to affect us. It's all going to be negative. So, if you think Trump's going to single-handedly himself change 5G, you're wrong, and you need to listen to a different show. But yeah, I mean, Epic. So as far as Epic or Jimmy, both of y'all answer this question is some people say that because the wireless transmitters for the 5G are going to be there's going to be more of them, and this is conventional logic for the mainstream science out there, that because of that it's supposed to be safer because I have a less effect on you. I don't see how that's even possible, but that's what they are claiming.
Well, Epic, I'll let you take that. And I'm going to tell you what, here's what I'm going to do right now, you guys, right here live on the show. I'm going to go look up a 5G omnidirectional antenna right now, and I'm going to go get the specs for it right now while Epic's talking to you about this. Because look, all they're going to need with this is this is an ad hoc network. So the footprint of the network is going to increase every time a node is added to it. So each time you go 250 feet, if the circumference of the antenna's ability to transmit is a circle 250 feet around, then the next antenna will be so those circles interlock. And as they interlock, the network then takes shape. So they don't have to put a cell site up in your town or in your neighborhood or any of that. What it's going to be is there's going to be a signal coming from somewhere to a main site, and from that site it will broadcast out, and from that it will jump onto light poles. I'm assuming light standards are going to be where these antennas are going to go, because I'm sure this thing is not going to be more than like the size of a volleyball. I'm gonna go look up one real quick while you guys are talking, Epic and Johnny.
Well, Epic, I've seen through my own research that I did in my next book, Fix Your Mitochondria, that 5G has been approved by the United States Federal Communications Commission to operate as high as 71 gigahertz. And the new Y-Gig wireless routers are going to operate at 60 gigahertz. That's ridiculous. Isn't it? That's going to have some increase the cellular effect on us, is it not?
Yeah, they claim it's all about the power levels. And like you said, by making them a shorter distance in between, they can keep that 1 watt per square centimeter saturation level on your flesh, right, down to where it's not going to cause you to feel it or have ill effects. But, I mean, I believe we could look this up on the active denial system, which is, I believe, it's either 30 or 40 gigahertz the Army uses. I think it's only 10 watts. Right, 10 watts.
Yeah.
So if it's 1 watt per square centimeter, you're okay. You up it by 9 watts, right? And you're running away and in pain and burning. That's not a lot of power, man. That's not that's not very much at all. So I mean, a 9 watts. To put it in perspective, 9 watts is a pretty big LED lamp, right? Mm-hmm. So that's not a lot of power, and you have to think to yourself, I mean, why is it so important? That's the question nobody seems to ask. That's one thing. And we think we all know about that. I think it really is about, what they call full spectrum dominance in the literal way. Because they're going to be on LED light poles as well. That's where they're going to go. And they're really small, right? And the thing is that LEDs also have Wi-Fi ability, right? So that's another way to use connectivity, using the light themselves.
Yeah. Now, Epic, is it true that I've heard that sunlight may interfere with some of the capabilities of 5G?
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, it would. I mean, it's not 100%, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it's going to block it out, but it's going to might cause interference issues, right?
Yeah, but I think the way they're going to overcome that is by modulating the frequency so that it's operating over a wider band. So it can compensate for that, and that's the whole thing. Is like they jump between different frequencies. So let's say it's actually targeting 30 gigahertz. Well, to get through the building, it might go at 600 megahertz, right? To get through the building, but then it goes and hits the repeaters, and then it's back to the 30 gigahertz again. So they're kind of being sneaky about this because they're able to call it 5G when it's not true 5G yet. So at sub 6 5G, where it's 5.4 gigahertz, let's say, up to 5.9, right? Then go up to 5.9. They're allowed to call that 5G, but that's not the millimeter waves yet. So it kind of gets people into a false sense of security where they're like, oh, well, I've had 5G on my router for a year and a half now. I don't notice anything wrong. Well, it's not the same.
It's not the same thing in the slightest
No,
bit.
not at all. Not at all. So I don't know if Jimmy's got his info for us yet on the antennas. I've seen a couple of them. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, I just sent it over to you, John. It's I don't know if you want to mention the manufacturer's name, but you can scroll down that and maybe read a little bit of that to your audience there. That's just the basic selling tool for this antenna. But you can see it says everybody's trying to say, oh well, they say it's going to roll out, but it's been rolled out, but really it's not rolled out. No, man. By the time you hear about it, it's already halfway out. I used to build cell sites. We start at one end and we work to the other. I was in charge of 350. If I had 350 of these to put out, be done, Jack. Nobody ever knows. I don't talk to anybody. I just roll my truck and hang that antenna, hook it into the head end, make sure it works, and leave. There's nobody going, okay, everybody, let's all turn on the 5G right now. Let's go.
Got to update the phones and release the new phones.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, and they sent out 5G capable routers to people. Oh yeah, come down and get your new router from the cable company.
Well, what about the Y-Gig routers, Jimmy, that they're going to be using for like apartment complexes and stuff when it's operating? It's going to operate at 60 gigahertz.
Listen, having this stuff around any soft-skulled children is just not a good idea. Period. Everybody wants to have they're wireless, man. Listen, I can only tell you this. I made a living off selling wireless, okay? And this is what I can tell you from my own boots on the ground experience with it in the corporate world. As much wireless as I could give them, they would buy from me. So in other words, if they said, hey, Jimmy, I want to have this area over here, I want some wireless over there, and I put it over there, it wouldn't be more than a week later before they'd be calling me back going, hey, can I have it over here too? And can I have it over there? And hey, can you do this and that? Yeah, I can. But guess what's else going to happen, John? When 5G rolls out, everybody's going to be able to sit on the bus or the subway and look in their hand and watch their movies in 3D, or even what Epic, is heavily into is VR. You may just be able to have this constant VR connection with the 5G. And so when people get that candy, when you got that headset on, man, and you're walking around in that world, man, you ain't gonna want to give it up.
It's gonna be like Ready Player One. It's gonna be like crack for your brain, and you need it. I mean, we know that non-native EMF, there's been studies of affecting the skin microbiome. It doesn't surprise me if it affects the microbiome of the gastrointestinal tract as well. We know that it's able to cause oxidative stress through the mitochondria through calcium influx, which could damage cells over time. It can, definitely lead to cancer. So we know that there are physical things that are negative that we know are harmful to us when we are exposed to non-native EMF radiation. And I just don't see how they'll say, well, 3G safer, 4G safer, 5G safer. Y gig wireless routers are safer because you'll have one wireless router for a whole building or for a whole block.
It's insane to have the. I mean, I looked at a project that was a nationwide rollout in subsidized housing. Mm-hmm. So this is housing where people can't live. Normally they need a little bit of help, so they don't have jobs or whatever. So whatever it is, they got this housing, right? Man, you should have. They were exactly what I was saying earlier with the ad hoc network. They just add in a node and it expands the footprint that much further, and it's harmful. There's no debating whether or not it is harmful. No debating it. You could go to court right now and win, because if you look, you can look this up. Lloyd's of London says they refuse to underwrite any of these carriers for damages caused by 5G.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. And what's even more interesting is that that appears to leave them in a vulnerable position, because the only way that you can go at this thing to try to stop it, if there's any way to stop it at this point, which I don't think there is, but the only way it's ever going to stop is if people point out the health aspects of it, and unfortunately you're going to have to point out what it does to the children.
Yeah. Well, we do know that non-native EMF exposure can influence male fertility, and female fertility too, but especially it can damage the sperm if you're putting your cell phone in your pocket. If anything, it's going to heat up your leg over time, and if you put heat directly on the sperm, they'll die. That's why it's better to wear boxers over briefs, because it keeps your boys from, your testicles are cooler actually than the rest of your body by a good half to a degree, to keep the sperm from cooking pretty much.
Right.
So that's there's been multiple studies of the effects of non-native EMF on human male fertility, and I think there should be actually some studies on female fertility as well, but there are less of those. And we do know that having a cell phone directly in your leg will cause you to dramatically reduce your sperm count, or completely reduce your sperm count to zero, so that you aren't able to procreate, and that's a major problem. So there are many health effects. I mean, the damage to the mitochondria that I mentioned earlier, damage to the microbiome, being able to cause cancer. There's a lot of issues.
Well, These are the biological effects of electromagnetic radiation, radio waves and microwaves. Eurasian communist countries show that microwave frequencies similar to those in cell phones can cause health problems in the following areas: blood, cardiovascular system, cells, central nervous system, digestive system, glands, metabolism, reproduction, visual system, internal sound perception.
Yeah. I mean, when I did my research for my book, we know that can increase your risk of Alzheimer's, can compromise your immune system, can cause inflammation, can actually cause leaky gut and, open up your blood-brain barrier. I mean, there's studies to prove this. Granted, a lot of them are in animals, but some of them are in humans too as well, especially the fertility studies. So in humans. So, I mean, it's directly negatively affecting us. We just need to figure out, is it worth being able to stream your whole entire life live on your phone for these effects? Now, I would say it's not, and I'm pretty sure Epic and Jimmy, you'd agree with me on that, but that's definitely what they're pushing.
Yeah, that's what they're pushing. I mean, the whole thing fits right into the agenda, John. I mean, there's less people being born. We've got almost an epidemic of autism, to the point where now it's almost like people are identifying being autistic because they have a certain proclivity to a certain kind of, function on the internet. I mean, there's, listen, when I was a boy, man, if there was one autistic kid somewhere, it was a very odd situation.
Now, Jimmy, it's just because they got better diagnostic techniques, brother. Has nothing to do with the fact of everything else causing autism, whether it's links to the improper diet, improper nutrition, vaccinations, non-native EMF, exposure.
Right. And so look, that fits right in with the depopulation agenda, if you ask me.
Yes.
And like I said earlier, honestly, John, I think a lot of people would rather not know and just go on about their lives and just think that they just got cancer for no reason, or whatever they say you get cancer for. You know what I mean? It's just, it's just the luck of the draw. It's just, you just got bad luck. You got cancer. Well,
I've seen people in groups where their children have gotten autism, still saying, even some of them had seizures after, getting their vaccinations, which could have led to their autism with encephalopathy. Mothers still saying, well, my children are still going to get the rest of their vaccinations, and my other children are going to get their vaccinations. And no, I'm not saying that vaccinations in and of themselves are I think autism is caused by many, many, many different parts of the system. And vaccines are a part of it, but it's not the only cause. There's many different levels to this machine. But yeah, I mean, if people are that blind where, their child has a seizure, probably has encephalopathy, but yet they continue to vaccinate their child even though they developed autism, sky's the limit, brother.
Well, let me bring something to the table here. Now, I'm going to say allegedly before I even start reading this, okay? This comes from a document called UK Intelligence Forces and Microwave Mind Control. This is what it says. I'll just read a quick paragraph here. Microwave weapons that turn people into stressed, confused, submissive zombies are being used in Britain's inner cities. Developed by the communists, microwave weapons similar to microwave ovens have since the 80s been targeted on inner city council estates. These weapons transmit extremely low frequency signals which mimic natural brain waves at the flick of a switch. All the people around these microwave transmitters are turned into submissive zombies who cannot think clearly, become depressed, apathetic, and want to lounge around all day and do nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what about that patent that I showed you that you played to, that you showed on your, you and Epic talked about on your show Into the Microcosm.
Yeah, you should let Epic jump in here.
Yeah,
because
Epic, go ahead.
He's a hard pipe hitting brother on this, because he is actually I mean, he is a submariner, and you got to know how to transmit signals, man. Nobody knows how to transmit signals like that, like the Epic Journeyman. I'll tell you that.
Well, how to interpret them, right? But and those are acoustic signals, and we did have ELF transmitters that were used to communicate to submerged submarines, and that they used Earth as the transmitter, right? But here's the thing: they also hit the same frequencies as your brain functions, right? So there's that whole thing about Taos, New Mexico, where they had that Taos hum, you might have heard of, right? And people would hear it, and kind of went out of the news after a couple of years. But these people in the town would hear this sound rumbling, and sure enough, I mean, that sure seems to be the transmitter for ELF, communicating to the submerged submarines. But as far as this RF weaponry goes, we were talking about a little bit on the show the other night, but I actually had the opportunity to be in what seemed to be a test of that in the 80s, in 1985, 86 actually, and in San Diego, just down the road from, it was just actually a Fleet Combat Weapons Center. And I was a civilian. I wasn't, there on purpose. I had to go to work that day. And we had built this mock-up, of a carrier combat information center, and we spent months building it up. We shielded the heck out of it. We had a huge grounding cable of just bare copper, like the size of two 750 MCM cables, if you know how big that is, pulled all the way out, hundreds of feet from this room, this shielded room, out to ground it outside. And when they brought in the guys who tested that day, there's the guys running the simulation. These are all Navy guys. Were wearing these unique headsets I've never seen before, right? And they were doing it was just a combat simulation where you have the guys that are operating the radars and the combat information center of a carrier, and you have the guys, doing fire control, all the normal things you do in a combat information whether it be a submarine or a surface ship. In this case, it was a carrier, a mock-up of a carrier. But none of those guys could concentrate. As soon as you walked in the room, you felt it, and those people were shaking their heads. Nobody could see or talk, practically anything. I personally felt like a disorientation where almost like my leg was chopped off, at the ankle or knee or something, and just really disoriented. But they had these like blue lights that flashed inside your head, like a strobe light, as soon as you walked in the room. And everybody in there was shaking their head. As soon as me and the other guy, civilian also, were called in there, and those guys laughed when we walked in. That was a pretty big clue to me, right? As soon as we walked out and the door shut behind us, that sensation went away. Right. So these were things that were discovered back the Soviets used in mental institutions for their dissidents. They'd lock up their dissidents and had these little transmitters every 50 feet that made this click sound. And the guys who came out of there said they couldn't remember anything that happened. It like basically made it difficult to remember and hard to focus, which is exactly what Jimmy was just saying about the tests they're doing in England, right? In these neighborhoods to make people lackadaisical and compliant, essentially.
Epic, is this similar to the what happened down there in the Cuban embassies with the sound waves that made people ill?
People are claiming those are kind of cricket. They go back and
I don't think it was a cricket.
Yeah, right. But it's kind of funny because it's a repeat of that 1972 Soviet, Moscow embassy, the American embassy in the Soviet Union. It was reported back then. Yeah, very very similar. And so there was some conjecture that what they call that clicking sound that came over the horizon from over the poles for so many years.
Woodpecker.
There you go.
Yeah, that was like the satellite system. You can still hear it come on sometimes. It's still
shortwave radio and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, you can still hear it activating.
Well, there was some conjecture about it. Go ahead, Jim.
The thing, I was just going to say, I mean, if you want to reference some pop culture, you can take a look at that movie, They Live. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. Because you can see, when the influx of cell phones happened it's pretty much just started right before 9/11 happened, man. And then after 9/11 happened, they passed this thing called E911 because the people that were stuck in the building had phones and they couldn't call out, and so they said that every building had to have a system in there so cell phones would work, and so that's why I got a lot of my business. So when they were rolling this microwave stuff out and they were making cell phones more affordable for the average person is when all of this stuff got out of control. Mm-hmm. Because it used to be that, the only way you had a cell phone is if you had a lot of money. Okay. And so then it got to the point where people got cell phones, and it's like if they had them, they made like a giant production out of the fact that they were on their cell phone, because it used to be people that had cell phones were rich, you know. Everybody to buy into the cell phone, but who's not going to want to be able to make a call when you're somewhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, some people can still claim that they hear weird sounds on their phones, similar to woodpecker when they make calls. Clyde Lewis has done many shows of that, of people, you know, play weird mechanical messages.
I've heard that. You pick up your phone and there's a message that comes in.
Yes, and
right?
it sounds it sounds mechanical and cold, and some of them. I remember one of them sounded like someone was like screeching in hell. It was like a monkey or something, like but it was like a mechanical howler monkey. Man, when Clyde does those shows, they're creepy as all hell, man.
I know. Well, you know what, dude? I'll tell you. That's exactly how. I mean, let's say that somebody had been previously trained and ready to go, and they don't know it, and that's exactly how you could trigger somebody into all of a sudden going berserk in a crowd of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
They pick up the phone. They pick up their phone. They hear a few noises in their ear, and boom. But I mean, you know, Epic and I were just talking the other night. I mean, 5G is sinister in and of itself. Possibly. But at this point, the thing about it is, unless you're gonna take it all away, okay, no one's gonna go for that.
Yeah.
And so all it is gonna do is just gonna keep moving forward, you know, and people get sick and they go, oh, look at them, they got sick, that's too bad. Well, we can't do it that way anymore, but don't worry, we got a new way, we're doing it this way now. We're just going to beam signals directly into your skull through invisible spectrum that penetrates your skull and goes directly into your brain.
Yeah, I mean, you guys talked about in Epic. I want to get your opinion on it. That patent that I shared with Jimmy about the nervous system manipulation by electromagnetic fields from monitors. I mean, this patent was filed by in 2001. And it's still active as of today. And people will say, well, they file patents all the time. That doesn't mean this technology is in use. No, I'm pretty sure nervous system manipulation by EMF from monitors and televisions that we watch and cell phones and receivers or whatever, transmitters is definitely going on. It has to be.
Hey, John, wait till he tells you about the guy's name. Make sure you tell him about that guy's name and what you said about loose patents.
All right, go ahead, break it down, Epic.
I'm trying to remember which part you're talking about. But with loose patents, there's a whole number of these patents.
The guy's name's Andrew Luce or something like that. So it's just
it's a variation of like Henry. It's Henry
like
something.
Hendrikus G. Luz.
Hendrik. Yeah.
Right. But Epic was saying that's just a cover name, that it's just loose patents that the CIA has, right, Epic?
It looks like they're DARPA. Yeah, it looks like they're DARPA because they go way back, and it's gone over like 30 some odd years, maybe more than that, like going on 40. I mean, for a long time. And
well, I found his legacy.com, take that as what you will, saying that he earned a doctorate in technical sciences from the Delft University of Technology. It was from Laguna Beach.
Yes, he's down in Southern California, right?
But he was old. He was like 91 when he passed away. He passed away 2 years ago. He was old as my grandfather.
Yeah, so he was he's an elderly man when he made this patent. And the thing about that patent is that was something when we were talking about things we used to talk about back in the day, on the subs and stuff, right? That wasn't something we used, obviously, that kind of thing. But when we talk about what we would consider the most secret thing we couldn't talk about was that kind of thing. Embedding things in the signals of television sets and the signals of radio, and actually using the monitors. Yeah, using the monitors, using TVs. It's kind of funny because They Live uses that obviously later, but there's a movie I believe it's called The Pulse, right? It's an old terrible movie, right? But it kind of uses that premise, and they've been talking about it for a long time. But when the TV was invented, it was invented to contact the other side, right? It was made to be a parapsychology tool, right? And transmitted the Maltese cross. That was the first thing it transmitted. So, according to urban legend, but it seems to be true. So, the fact that the patent's out there, it came out so late to the game in terms of compared to the urban legends that have been around for a long time leading up to it, and some of the documentation that was around leading up to that, makes you think that it's like they don't tell you anything if they don't think that they already have a way to control it. You know what I mean? Like, let's say it's whoever's got the control over all this tech, but they already have something better than getting at. So if that works, and it did, I'm sure of that. I'm convinced, right? And it's probably still being used to this day. It means there's something better, right?
Very much so. So here's his patents. I want to go over with you, Epic, real quick, and let's see what you think about them. We got the one that I read. There was a remote magnetic manipulation of nervous systems in 1999. Pulse variability in electric field manipulation of nervous systems, 1999. Electric fringe field generator for manipulating nervous systems, 2000. Subliminal acoustic manipulation of nervous systems, 2000. Method and apparatus for associated memory, 1999. Magnetic excitation of sensory resonances, 1999. I mean, this guy obviously was. I mean, why isn't he working for the government? Like, the stuff's. He had all these patents, even some going back in the 1980s. For particle size distribution, and to measure particle sizes of gases and electrics, using like a monochromatic light. Like, this guy's been doing this stuff forever, so why did he, change all of a sudden in a short time of a span of 3 years, publish so many patents for mind control? It's just crazy, when his stuff beforehand wasn't that at all.
Check this out. Dr. Ross Addy's research at the Brain Research Institute at the University of California was funded by the CIA in their Pandora project. A catalog of different brain signals for specific actions, emotions, and pathological states of mind were recorded. It was found that when microwaves were used to fire these signals at victims' brains, they experienced moods, behaviors, and pathological states carried by the signals. That meant that by mimicking the natural brain frequency, the human brain could be controlled remotely by using extremely low frequency broadcasts carried by a pulse modulated microwave beam.
That's crazy.
Yeah, kind of like 5G, right? Kind of like 5G,
Kinda.
Yeah, kind of, right? And Jack Anderson is the guy who reported on that back in, because that was the 1972 Moscow embassy stuff that brought that to light. That they were using those to mind. That was they talked about. It was big, big scandal back in the 70s, right? That they're trying to mind control our guys in the embassy, right? Well, trying, was it really the Soviets or was it our guys? You have to wonder, at that point. So again, by revealing this stuff, that rapid succession of document dumps that came out in a couple of years between 99 and 2001 and 2002 by Luce and his patents, you have to think that that's like something that they've moved on from. It's like, well, cat's out of the bag. We'll just go ahead and put this out there in the public domain to where people will see it, think it's just kind of crazy talk. Yes, this guy just patents anything, and sci-fi. But no, it has a history. It goes back. We're talking about it going back at least to the 40s. Last night, right? Or night before last. And there's evidence of that all over the place. But what's now is the delivery system is different, right? The delivery system is different. You don't have to have something on the person, but we do in the form of a cell phone, right? But these brain-computer interfaces, I think that's really the end game of this, I think, is that they're trying to get it to where the computational power is in the cloud. And by having zero latency, basically with the 5G high spectrum stuff, you can make it work. All the smart cars, self-driving cars can communicate. Okay, that's great, whatever. But what could also happen is the gamers are going to love it. They're already clamoring for it, right? Because you can download a high resolution, perfect, 4K, better, optical quality, to match your eyes image in frame rate of a simulation or a game, right? Without having a supercomputer do it. You just have to have the connection to the cloud computing. Right? Because the cloud computing has all these, masses of computers around the world that you can use anytime they're not being used for one thing. You can use the resources to power your application. Well, that starts applying to the brain too, right? I mean, that's what the big problem is now it's not just your headset. If it's a brain-computer interface, which China just patented something like that the other day. They have what they call it not the talk chip, something like that. You have to look it up. You guys probably heard it was a couple of days ago, June 3rd, right? China came up with their own BCI, right? They're going to put in stuff. Yeah. And we have several in the works already.
So I looked up Heinrich Lewis, and I'm gonna read his abstract real quick for his patent, and I'm gonna give you a little bit of his background from what I've been able to find real quick. So his abstract says physiological effects have been observed in a human subject in response to stimulation of the skin with weak electromagnetic fields that are pulsed with circuit frequencies near 1/2 hertz or 2.4 hertz, so as to excite a sensory resonance. Many computer monitors and TV tubes, when displaying pulse images, emit pulse electromagnetic fields of sufficient amplitudes to cause such excitation. It is therefore possible to manipulate the nervous system of a subject by pulsing images displayed on a nearby computer monitor or TV set. For the latter, the image pulsing may be embedded in the program material or may be overlaid by modulating a video stream either as an RF signal or as a video signal. The image displayed on a computer monitor may be pulsed effectively by a simple computer program. For certain monitors, pulsed electromagnetic fields capable of exciting sensory resonance in nearby subjects may be generated even as displayed images or pulse with subliminal intensity. Pulsing images displayed on... I mean, they're still doing it today. Like, it's crazy how, this guy knew about it, and then when you look into his background, it says that he worked for the Douglas Aircraft Advanced Research Department studying electromagnetic fields, utilizing the Yang-Mills theory. He worked in the late 1950s with the Plasmadyne Corporation and yielded a patent for apparatus and method for generating and containing plasma, having ultra-high temperatures. And in the 1980s, he set up a shop in Fallbrook, California, and developed the Laguna Research Laboratory, working on government projects for the likes of the Department of Defense, Department of Health and Human Services, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, which is DARPA, the boys in the white coats that Josh Reeves always talks about. So... he's been doing a lot of work. I mean, this guy isn't this Hendricus G. Lewis, if he's a real person, Henry Lewis or Hank Lewis, which he goes by. If he's a real person, he's been a really busy guy. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I've put forward a couple times that people like characters like Shakespeare or Christopher Columbus are just a name that a bunch of different people contribute to, that the person doesn't even actually exist as a person. Maybe this is one of those. Epic, what do you think? Hey, I'm not sure he's there. If Epic's there.
I was sitting here wandering off. I was talking with the microphone. Sorry. So yeah, you had mentioned the company that caught my attention. Was it called Plasmatronics or something like that?
Plasmadyne in the 1950s.
Plasmadyne. I was about to look that up because there's it's called a Plasmatron, which was one of the it was a company that made these computers that the military used originally, called Tektronix. Right before it ever went to the civilian sector, it's called Tektronix, and you had these little cartridges. You loaded these single wireframe kind of graphics, almost like Battlezone. You remember the old arcade game Battlezone? Mm-hmm. It's kind of how they did it. But they had those things, and they were going back to the 80s. I mean, I had them on the boat back in the 80s, 81, right? So they ended up selling that to Sony, and it became using these thin film transistors and all this other stuff. But I was kind of curious if he was caught up in that, because since this was out in the field in the 80s,
and he's working with it in the 50s. Well, I think his thing was to control actual plasma.
It sounds like it.
Which is patent, but it's interesting. I mean, I'm going to do some more research into this guy and find out if it's real, if he's real or not. But his knowledge, I mean, you think the government would be, it's like the old story about the farmer out in the fields who gets the 100 miles to the gallon carburetor. And then the government swoops in and takes care of him and takes care of Ed, if you know what I mean. So if this guy's got all these patents for all this, it could be used for mind control or nefarious purposes, why isn't the government knocking on his door, and being like, hey, at the bare minimum, can we, we'll pay you, we need to use this technology. It's very fishy in my opinion.
He doesn't exist, man.
I don't think he exists, because I'm looking up Plasmadyne. And there's actually, just on the fly here, and they have a published book. Yeah, in 1959 they published this book, right? It's called Plasmadyne Corporation. That was the name of the book, right? Year of publication, 1959. And people, none found. Places, none found. Subject, none found. So basically, it is a shell.
It's a shell, dude.
It's a shell.
Listen
Yeah,
to
it's
this.
just world cat identities. It's so weird. Yeah, man, it's the path, the alleyways that you can go down in the streets when you're digging and looking through information. It's wild,
Yeah, it's amazing what you can find out if you actually look, huh, John?
Yeah.
Most people, all they do is see the headline and figure they got it all figured out. Yeah, it's intense, man. Hey, I wanted to sort of highlight something. So I was reading through this document here by Tim Refat, Terrible Tim Refat, and it's pretty far down in the document, but he's talking about a particular menu here. Particular excitation potential is then broadcast by pulse modulated microwave transmitters. This pulse modulated microwave beam has ELF excitation frequencies imprinted on it. It was found that each behavior set humans to a distinct frequency, such as there was one for anger, suicide, hysteria, trauma, serial killing, paranoia, lust, etc. It's suggested or inferred here that intelligence operatives in the UK regularly park microwave transmitters outside targets' houses and beam specific mood inducing excitation potentials at the victim. To aid them, they have a sophisticated millimeter wave scanner to look through victims' walls so they can see the targets in their homes, and pulse modulated microwaves regularly directed at the victims' brains, while the other people in their homes are oblivious to what's going on.
Now, I remember Terrible Tim used to say on Rinse, which Josh Reeves affectionately calls the Poodlehead Spook Network, that these devices were being used on him by the United Kingdom government. And it has put him into mental institutions from time to time from them messing with him mentally so bad.
Yeah, I mean, he's super intense about this subject, but seriously, the only reason I even ever got onto him about this is because he had written this piece, and I was interested in it because he was specifically talking about millimeter wave radios being used by the UK police departments. And these bobbies or whatever carry these radios, and they have the receivers hanging over the side of their hearts, and they carry these radios around with them in their neighborhoods when they go home, and they carry them around. So I figured when I saw that in the article, I went and took a look at that, and because that to me was a smaller version of what's being proposed with the 5G. So I figured if you looked at that small control group, you could pick out of there how many people got sick, how many people got this kind of cancer, that kind of cancer. I mean, because let's just say if it's 100 people and this many got cancer, then you just extrapolate that. You see what I mean? It's a simple control group to just look at without going to court about it. And sure enough, people were sick. People got sick, and then there was a whole lawsuits filed and all kinds of stuff about these radios. Epic, do you know about those radios? I forget what they were transmitting now, but it was I'd have to go look them up again.
Yeah, we heard about it. It was discussed a couple months back quite a bit because for whatever reason it got released. There's some kind of press release about some of those guys that are having issues, or I think it was they had issues, right? Some of the bobbies had issues. They're blaming it on those radios. And yeah, there's all. It looks like it was again one of these test platforms where let's just go throw it at these guys and let them run it for a couple of years and see what happens to them, right?
That's what got me interested in the first place, because I was saying that this is if I look at it, it's a test bed for the situation. Exactly what people are wanting to know about 5G, they could see by these radios that they were using in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, I remember. I listened to a lot of Tim Refat. I always thought he was brilliant, even though I also think he's a little bit crazy too. But nonetheless, it doesn't detract from the moments of brilliance he has. And he did a really good breakdown of Katy Perry's Chained to the Rhythm back in the day, and how North Korea may use cobalt-60 if they're ever triggered by the world order to cause major damage throughout the world. because of how poisonous cobalt 60 is to the mitochondria and how quickly it can create death. But I mean, I've been following terrible Tim Refat for a long time, and more often than not, he's right about what he says, even though I think he's kind of angry a little bit. I think he's, as far as, he doesn't look at that what they're doing is a bad thing. He thinks we deserve it because we can't figure out the truth.
He's English too, though, man.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nobody that's more. I mean, people think East Coasters are sarcastic, man. Let me tell you something, man. People over in the UK are, man, they'll put anybody on tilt. Seriously, when somebody gets, you get an English person mad, I mean, they're, look out. But he's been around for a while, and yeah, the cobalt 60 stuff is super scary. I mean, some might even consider that a big teaspoon of fear porn.
It could be.
It's that scary because it's that.
Hold on now.
Yeah.
I understand. Is the cobalt 60 you're talking about the Khrushchev doomsday weapon? He had that doomsday ship, right? Where there's originally talking about making a cobalt bomb, but he had this ship in Khrushchev's reign in the Soviet Union that the threat was if he was ever nuked and couldn't get it out, he'd detonate that ship, and that ship had cobalt, and I believe it was cobalt 60 that would go and destroy all life on Earth.
It would. Cobalt 60 would, yes. And that's what terrible Tim Refat would say is that North Korea has it. But again, if you watch the To the Rhythm Katy Perry video, they are flaunting that they have this cobalt 60 in our face. Like, he is 100% right. I remember seeing that music video before he even broke it down, because I always watch pop culture music videos, and watching it and going, oh my god, this is exactly what Tim Refat was talking about all this time. You can ask people in my Discord group. And sure enough, it came out that, yeah, that's exactly, he was like, well, I guess someone showed it to him, and he saw it himself, and he was like, yeah, this is exactly what I was talking about. So there is something to it, just because go watch the Chain to the Rhythm Katy Perry video, and watch how, they're drinking, these blue drinks and spaceships and everything, and rocket ships, should I say. Just go watch it. It's really something to it. There's something to Tim Refat's analysis of it. Epic. There's something to it.
Yeah, I've never seen that before. I'm going to have to look into that, because that's really interesting to me, because I heard about that when the Soviet Union collapsed. That whole story about the doomsday ship came out again, because I guess it was still sitting there rotting at the pier side.
Yeah.
They had to figure out what to do with it, right? And so the question was, was it really true, right? Because if it was true, they know where it is, right? Supposedly, this is people within the Soviet Union, and they have to figure out a way to dispose of it, excuse me. So, yeah, it's an interesting concept. And I think, wasn't there a movie, that Prometheus Effect or something, wasn't that basically about that too, where they go to, it's a 60s movie. People haven't seen it. I don't remember the whole movie, but basically that was the gist of it was they go and they drop a nuke, and it's too late because it sets off the doomsday effect, basically, Yeah, people do stupid stuff. and like, I was just reading about graphene the other day, and you guys familiar with graphene? It's,
yes.
It's just carbon nanotubes, and they're putting a structure, it can be conductive and stuff.
Yeah.
You got carbon. Well, in the context of me studying the moire patterns, right, I found that moire patterns, when used with graphene, become superconducting. And it occurred to me, because they're able to make chips that are 10,000 times faster than regular chips. IBM made one in 2014, supposedly doing it that way. Mm-hmm. But if you could get that injected into your system somehow, to where it's in your system, it's somewhere in the brain layers, that's far-fetched for sure. But if that was possible, right, then by radiating it with these millimeter waves, you could create that Moire effect, right, and bridge the synapses of the brain. You could actually that'd be the superconductor to cause hallucinations, right, to cause effects on the psyche by stimulating those regions of the brain, by making them connect, just by manipulating the pattern hitting the graphene. Now, we're not there yet, I don't think, but it was something that made me think. It's like, wow, that'd be pretty intense if that was possible. People go get their BCI, right? They get their Neuralink from Elon Musk, right? And it goes into your neocortex, right? Next thing you know, you got this graphene layer that bridges the entire, neural pathways of the brain, right? Which you can stimulate remotely with millimeter waves. Great.
That's
just what we
crazy.
want.
That's crazy, Epic. Do you remember if I think one of the bombs that Russia used in Doctor Strangelove was a cobalt bomb? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was. I just remember they ended up nuking everybody.
I think it was a cobalt bomb, if I remember. I'll have to go back and look, but I think it was. I think cobalt bombs have been used throughout pop culture. I think I think they talked about how the Israeli jets had cobalt. They could add cobalt tips to their payloads, and Tom Clancy, who was part of the CMP, The Sum of All Fears, his novel. So they've been weaving cobalt bombs into the narrative of the mind over many decades.
At least since the 60s, yeah, at least. And obviously farther back, because Khrushchev was pounding a shoe in the 50s, right? Maybe it was the 60s, I'm sorry. But yeah.
And if I remember, what about the bomb that was in Goldfinger? It was cobalt and iodine, wasn't it? I think. I know it's been used many times. I've seen Goldfinger a lot. My father loved James Bond movies. I used to watch it with him all the time when I was growing up. But I think the bomb, I think so. But
hey, Boneless Rocker in the chat says Google said it was inspired by the cobalt bomb. That's interesting, man.
That is
awesome.
interesting. That is interesting, Boneless. I wasn't aware of that, brother. That's, I guess so. Man, I wonder if it's similar to the neutron bomb. They've been putting that in the public eye, the consciousness. I remember my dad, because my dad was a conspiracy theorist. I remember he used to talk about the neutron bomb all the time, and how it would leave physical structures intact, but would destroy life. So it's interesting how they've never used these bombs, but yeah. Then again, hold on. Let me say this.
5G neutron.
Crow 777 tells me that nuclear bombs don't exist. Okay, so let's go ahead and leave that.
Well, let me tack on there, because I remember reading those articles in Time Magazine and U.S. News World Report back during the Carter administration lifetime, right? Because I was at LBRY hound back in the day, and they talked about exactly that, what you described, like how they were going to make the neutron bomb. This is during the Carter administration. They were going to make it, and the idea being that it would destroy an area about, Time Magazine for sure, I'm sure you can find it. It would destroy an area about the size of a city block, maybe 2 city blocks, and kill everybody in a major city. Like the size of Manhattan, you could drop it there, kill everybody in there, but leave the majority of structures intact, and only leave a footprint the same as dropping a large, say 2,000-pound bomb. Right? So its actual amount of damage it caused physically wasn't that bad. And neutrons are absorbed by water vapor. Water vapor is what use water for shielding on a reactor, on a fission reactor, because water absorbs the stray neutrons. Neutrons are the most high energy particles, right? And they're looking for a proton, they take it, right? So if you're exposed to neutron radiation, you're in bad shape. You're getting stripped of your protons as it passes through you, right? That's why water is so important. So I know about this from the old submarine days, right? As far as that kind of shielding and why it's important with the neutron, how you shield neutron radiation. So that's the premise. So basically, as soon as it rained, right, or as soon as some water vapor came through, it'd clear the neutrons, because neutron radiation itself would be absorbed. It would leave less. It wouldn't be as much beta and alpha radiation fallout. Alpha and beta fallout, right? Because particles wouldn't be caught up in the dirt and the air and all that stuff and travel far. So yeah, they definitely thought about making them. I think it just got negotiated in a treaty, maybe the SALT I treaty, to be not used.
Well, all they got to really do is, apparently, this is what I've heard on the internet. All they got to do is turn up that 5G, and they got themselves a neutron bomb all rolled into one. They don't even have to blow a 2,000 bomb up. They just fry everybody's brain by just exploding it with too much signal.
Well, Jimmy, I remember that Michael Savage from the Savage Nation, he interviewed Dr. Samuel Cohen, the man who developed the neutron bomb, and actually listened to that interview a long time ago when we replayed it. And his same thing he used to say, Epic, about how it would leave the buildings intact, but kill people and everything like that. Well, Savage has been tweeting every so often that maybe we should use the neutron bomb on North Korea. Good old CMP Savage, the warmonger that he is, even though he claims he's a peacenik now. It's just really interesting. You know, it's the more things change, the more things stay the same. Just like the dance they're doing in Iran right now, and how they shot down, quote unquote, shot down a drone. But when the USSR shot down a Korean airliner with Congressman Larry McDonald on it, we didn't do anything, but they shoot down a drone in this war. So it's just sickening. You know what I mean?
It was from the Birch Society, right?
Larry McDonald, yes, he was John Bircher, and
yeah.
he was in the Council for National Policy as well. He was both.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things about that. Go ahead.
What I want to know is why a drone that has the potential to be shot down costs, how much did they say it was? $111 million or something?
I could tell you a lot about that drone, actually.
I know you can. I know you can.
So that's not a General Atomics drone, okay? The General Atomics drones are the Predators, the Reaper, Sky Warrior, all those things, right? And those drones are flown by pilots remotely, but they're flown by pilots, right? They have an actual pilot ground control station, and you fly the plane. So they're not pilotless, so you can maneuver the plane anytime you want to. The Global Hawk, the one that was shot down, right, is terrain mapping. It uses the same kind of technology Tomahawk missiles use to plot its course and fly. The reason we use it as a drone is because it can fly to an area fast because it's a jet, and you know, do the same kind of thing, basically the same kind of skyball that we use for observation that General Atomics and the Predator drone uses, or perhaps even Argus, right? Which if it was Argus, you can imagine, like, how could you not see him film everything? It would have filmed the entire thing, right? But it's short range, basically. Well, I'll say short range. Its duration of staying in the air is not that long because it's a jet. You know, where a Predator drone could stay up there 40 hours, right? So when I heard the story, I'm like, you know, first of all, it's a very expensive piece of hardware to lose, and there's something not right about that story. There's a lot of things not right about that story, because there's Predator drones supposedly flying Predator Bs. They supposedly filmed the whole thing originally, the attack on the tankers near the Gulf of, the Strait of Hormuz. And I know for a fact that's not possible for us not to have excellent footage of that if that was true, because we'd be targeting and looking at that directly the entire time. We would definitely have that footage. Not only that, but that's such a narrow strait, 21 miles. You can see it from one side of the shore to the other side. There's people binoculars staring at people on the other side of the shore and the other side of it practically, right? So yeah, the whole thing's lame. And then it's going to be, you know, these old limpet mines, you know, like World War II mines, supposedly. Yeah, right.
or Epic and Jimmy, what about the headline on Drudge that it was a deep fake photo, which you guys have been talking about the past couple of weeks on Into the Microcosm, which I definitely think, you know, follow Jimmy's channel on YouTube, as well as go back and listen to some of the old broadcasts. Some of them I've been in, some of them I haven't. Where we've been talking about deep fakes, and they said the Iran state agency photo that showed the drone was being shot down over Yemen, that was a quote unquote deep fake. So there you go. It's into the lexicon, is it not, Epic?
It is, and they're trying to get it more and more into lexicon, and it's going to work because it starts to become scary. We've been talking about it for a while now. Excuse me, I had to swallow there, and you know. For the public to just now really be catching on to what this means. I mean, I saw Jurassic Park and I realized what that meant. You know what I mean? As soon as I saw a Tyrannosaurus chase that Jeep, I'm like, you know, it's over. It's over. Once film went away, that's it. Now everything's digitized, and digitized data could be changed in a microsecond, anytime, right? So, but now people are starting to become aware of what it means to them personally. Like, oh, wait a minute, they could put me in a porno movie, you know, and I wasn't in that movie, and now my wife's on that movie, right?
They've gone past the uncanny valley at this point, right?
Definitely.
It's sad but true.
You're on top of Uncanny Mountain, man, looking down into the valley right now, because I'm telling you, this stuff is heinous, man. It really is. I mean, we happen to be looking at the heinous side of it, but coming to terms with the fact that it's never going to go away. There are going to be benefits. I mean, at least you'll be able to watch a little movie. You'll be able to watch the movie in 3D on your hand if you want. You'll be able to watch any movie you want.
Yes, that's all I've ever wanted, Jimmy.
You could toss all the, you know, you got 10 kids in the back. Don't worry, toss 10 phones back there. And then wonder why all the kids are walking around with a blank stare on their face.
Or even worse, tumors.
Yeah, or even worse. But I'm just saying, I mean, kids don't look like they used to. for some reason. They just got this different look about them. There's something different about, a child that grows up without a cell phone on their face. I mean, because like I was, kind of bringing to the fore the other day, when I was a kid, they threw us in front of the TV sets, and we know what happened to us then. I mean, we see what happens to kids who you throw in front of the TV sets. Well, now, the new babysitter is the iPad, the iPhone, and the Android, and they're all sitting in the Samsung, and they're all sitting in there, and kids are easily amused by them and master the ability to work these phones at a rate that's literally mind-boggling.
Yeah, Jimmy, very much so, brother. And, Boneless Rocker in the chat, he just said, it fears it could be an end game, a new heaven and a new earth. And there's truth to that. It's scary. One last thing I want to talk with you guys about. Is there any tips that we can give? Is there any advice that we can give that a person can limit their exposure, if any, at this point? Because it's all around. Your neighbor's got a billion smart devices. If you live in an apartment, good freaking luck. If you live in a house, then maybe you can get some defense. You guys got any tips or anything? Real quick. We leave on a positive note of some things that maybe we can do to stop the tide.
I think I do. Like when you're talking about these millimeter waves, the ones that are coming, because they're short ranged, they have a hard time penetrating, right angles. Well, that's true of all RF has a hard time with right angles. That's why it's called spider works, right? But you can buy some materials to put around the room, make a kind of a safe space if you want to do that, but it could be kind of expensive. They make some good foam for that now that you can buy, and some good stuff like that. But one of the things you can do is obviously screen. It's pretty cheap. You can do that. But think of it like a big patio. If you know how they have those garden party kind of things where you get the little hose. It goes and has little drops the water in a mister, mister for your garden party, right? Well, that mister is great for ionizing radiation, which supposedly this isn't because it will absorb the neutrons. So that's fantastic. But in the case of these high energy waves, these millimeter waves, yes, it's going to disrupt them. So for very little cost, other than the cost of running some water through some tubing and making a mister, you can do whole areas in your yard, your house, whatever, combine with some screen mesh, make sure it's steel mesh or aluminum mesh, and have a really good ability to shield yourself from RF. So that's a cheap way to do it, and keep it cool while you're at it.
Yeah.
That's my recommendation.
Brilliant, man. Wow, epic. Here, let me give you a hand.
Yep.
That was great, and not only that, I've never heard anybody say that before.
Either have I, Epic. Either have I, man. Great stuff.
Let that be a warning.
Uh-oh. Make sure you ground your screen, too, like drive the ground rod or take it to
and you want to make sure the ground rod is nowhere near any electrical wiring. Not because you don't want to electrocute yourself, but because of the dirty electricity, you don't want it attached to the ground rod in and of itself.
But yeah, don't tie anything else electric to it either, right?
Yeah.
But just to get the static, you ground it, make sure it's got a good ground. If you live somewhere, you got some nice soil. It'll work. It works pretty good. So there's something you could do for $100, man.
I've talked to a dude. I went out to the contact in the desert last year, and this guy came up and he wanted to whistle blow to me about some stuff that was happening to him. And but one of the things, he was a targeted individual. He was a gambler in Vegas, and the company out there didn't want him playing in his casinos, and they targeted him. And he told me that the house next door to him was vacant, and somebody moved in, and then the signal started blasting on the side of his house. Couldn't sleep, couldn't he was all irritated. So what he did was he built an igloo inside of his house out of full gallon jugs, water containers. It's like milk containers, water full on jugs. He built a igloo out of that. He would sleep in there at night.
That'll totally work. I was trying to help a girl that was she was trying to get she wanted to sleep in a Faraday cage basically. And Faraday cage is really, a real one is expensive. If you're going to really make it work, right? They spend a lot of money to do that in the defense industry. When you have these secure rooms, right? They basically have a Faraday cage, and they have the noise canceling, white noise kind of stuff in there, and all kinds of precautions they take, double drywall and layers and metal in the wall and all that stuff. But the best thing to do, one of the cheapest things to do is old water bottles. Old water bottles, you do that in water. Water's the best thing. The more water you can put between you and the signal, the better. You just test it with your phone. That's a good way of testing what your signal's like, right?
You could probably build yourself like a wall out of old liter soda bottles. You get them down at the recycling place, and just put like a wall together, just to, with a couple 2x4s, and then just put something there to hold the bottles up there. You probably just tie them together, on the top. That would probably, I'm just saying, blocking it out, out in the backyard or something.
Yeah, and I would suggest for people to, try to put, if you got a phone, try to, keep it on airplane mode as much as you possibly can. Try to keep off Wi-Fi and the mobile data if you're not using it. If you're going to use a safe sleeve like me, that may help block it, radiate your legs. Using air tube headsets, going outside and grounding and getting sun. Of course, with nothing magnetic on you when you do it, obviously, and don't ground underneath like the main wire that's feeding electricity into your house. That's not a good idea either. But grounding away from that in your backyard, 20 to 30 minutes a day, more if necessary, can definitely help, because you're going to get some energy from the sun. You're going to get some photoelectric energy from the sun. You're going to get some energy from the earth, from the Schumann resonance too, as well, from grounding. So definitely would be something I would do. And if anybody thinks they're getting attacked, one of the best things, the quickest things you can do is just run outside and just lay on the ground, because that should help block some of it by grounding. It won't block all of it. Or if you have a metal tub, climbing into a metal tub may shield it some too as well.
There's a material called shungite. Okay, it only comes from one place in Russia, and or at least that's what I understand. At any rate, you can buy this in tiles if you have enough money. They make a tile. I've done some extensive RF work in buildings, and they use in corporations here in the Silicon Valley. One of the things that they don't want is people being able to sniff through the glass and hear conversations. So they have glass that they make specifically to keep RF out. So you can actually, you can find this glass. Also, like I say, they have the shungite tiles. It's super expensive, but just doing like one quiet room in your house. A lot of people don't even realize how irritating a certain 60 cycle hum is. That's constantly going. That's why when the power goes out, everything seems so peaceful.
Yeah.
And that's seriously, that's what it's like.
I know. I'm just laughing because you're right. It's, no one ever realizes that. Or if we went into an actual like radio quiet zone in Virginia, or actually went into a quiet room, we'd probably go crazy because we're not used to quiet anymore.
Yeah, and we're being assaulted. I mean, just what we were noticing earlier. Let's just pretend there isn't any sinister people behind anything, and no one would ever do anything to hurt us. That's just an accident that some of these frequencies at the power levels that they're sending are actually causing emotional responses, because they're so close to the emotional frequency that they know exists, and that they know each emotion, like we were saying earlier. So, I mean, just from the simple agitation, even if there isn't anybody back there turning up the anger button or pushing the apathy button, it's just the overall irritation that goes on in our daily lives from something invisible we have no control over. Once it leaves the transmitter, there's nothing you can do about it, unless you build yourself a mister out back, like Epic just said, or get yourself a water jug igloo. But other than that, you can be an activist all you want, and you can say you don't like wireless, and you can resist it and turn it off in your house. But like Johnny was saying earlier, the guy next door is not going to turn it off. It's the same thing with your smart meter. I don't want a smart meter. Okay, Well, it'll cost you $50 a month extra to not have a smart meter. Okay, I'll pay it. I don't want to have a smart meter in my house. Doesn't matter because everybody else around you has a smart meter.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even though you're doing your thing and you're saying I don't want it, it's not doing anything.
Now,
I mean,
I will say this. I wouldn't say it's not doing anything, Jimmy, but it's not doing as much as you think it might. Because the farther the distance, the less effect it would have, right? So, I guess it depends on how close you are to your neighbors.
Yeah, I mean, just think about this. Okay, now I was down in San Jose State. I was troubleshooting an issue, and it was a sorority house. They had just installed some Cisco gear, some wireless 802.11, wireless network and stuff. And all of a sudden, they had these interference issues. So I went down there and I noticed. I said, "Hey, is anything new around?" "Oh, PG&E was just here. They installed a smart meter." Okay, boom. I go, okay, well, maybe the smart meter's interfering. So I'm there on a service call for a company. So I got to call PG&E and go, "Hey, man, you guys just installed this. I got issues with my wireless. What frequency are you transmitting at?"
Mm-hmm.
But I can look for it, so I can eliminate you from what I'm looking at. And so they were transmitting at between 860 and 900 megahertz at 1 watt.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So
yeah, I don't even know what to say.
Okay. Well, yeah. So also, let me just say this now: on an apartment building, if these are smart meters, they shouldn't need 100 smart meters for 100 apartments. They should need one smart meter.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's smart, they only need 1 meter for 100 residences there. But instead, what they do is they got these giant walls of smart meters.
God, yeah, they do.
On the sides of these apartment complexes. It's like having a cell site in your house.
Pretty much, if you take anything from this episode of Dudes Talking, is this: don't live in an apartment building. Don't live in the stacks because you're gonna get it every which way if you live in the stacks.
Yeah, I mean, Epic's got the right idea, man. He got in his canoe and took off for Speculation Island. So he's
right, Big Island.
He's living out on Speculation Island, man, and he's got it made out there.
You got to be grounded. Like we're talking about those milk cartons and stuff. Those only work if you have a way to ground it, make a mesh between them or whatever. But the idea is solid. Like if you jump in a swimming pool, or jump in the ocean because it's grounded, get underwater. Yeah, it definitely shields it. So yeah, it's one way to do it. They spend a lot of money making those RF shielded rooms and Faraday cages, and the best one won't work if it's not grounded properly. So
I was actually thinking about starting a company to do that, Epic. You and I should talk about that, man. Because I think there's a lot of people out there that would really want, especially if we could put something together that would be, affordable for folks. It's like regular folks, because rich people could definitely afford it, and we can always do them for them too. You just charge them a lot of money.
For the deep underground bunkers.
Build them moats. Just surround walls by water.
I swear to God, I did this house up in Aspen, and the guy bought a piece of property that looks straight down. His house looks straight down into Aspen, and you could see the ski mountain on the other side. This guy spent nothing but money in that house, man. And let me tell you something. I wouldn't want to be that guy living in that house, because they pulled in, and Epic will appreciate this, the same spec for a 3,000 square foot house in Aspen, same spec for a 20,000 square foot house. So they had nothing but all this Romex coming in, right? Which is electrical cable that's not in pipe. So the electrical fields, it's not shielded or anything. So electrical fields just come out. So a 20,000 square foot house, all the power cables were coming into these panels downstairs. Right below the guy's movie room, where he had this whole $1 million. Yeah. Imagine the electromagnetic fields coming off a bundle of Romex. I am not kidding. It was 5 feet around. I'm not joking.
God. I would not want to be watching movies in there. I guess you're getting fried while you're watching the movie by the movie itself and by the dirty electricity.
Honey, I've got a headache. I'm not sure why.
I'm bleeding. My nose is bleeding and my ears are bleeding. Ugh. All right, Jimmy and Epic. I'm glad, you guys both made it. You guys are welcome back. I'll definitely have you back again in the future. I want to thank you for joining us. Where can they find you both?
Well, I'm over on Into the Microcosm channel on YouTube. So you just look for that Into the Microcosm.
It'll be in the show notes. Like, share, and subscribe to Jimmy. He's a true seeker.
And Epic's been hanging with me on the show too. And so me and Epic are venturing out. We just broke away from a network, and now we're going to start doing our own thing on YouTube. So I'm like the last dude to join YouTube. I don't think there's anybody standing behind me in line, so I'm pretty sure I'm the last guy. But
the last bastion of truth against censorship.
Well, you know what? I mean, we have a good time, and we talk about a lot of different things over there. So I mean, we're not stuck on 5G. So right now, what we've been working on is the mind control psycho bunnies that came out of the Playboy Mansion, and how many people got manipulated and hung out to dry by blackmail from the things that went on over there. So it's been a pretty interesting ride the last couple of weeks, man. And plus the SRI stuff that we found it's been a rocket ride, man.
And your last major stream, This Is Your Brain, it was excellent. Both of y'all, excellent work. I can't applaud you enough. The work that you're doing to try to bring truth to light.
Thank you,
Hopefully
man.
people hear it.
Yeah. They will, Epic. We'll get it out somehow, brother. But thank y'all both. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. See ya.
All right. That's both Jimmy Jean, Epic Journeyman. You can find them both on Into the Microcosm with Jimmy Jean. Sometimes you can find me on there too. We're all hard pipe-hitting brothers from the street, just like off of Quentin Tarantino's movie Pulp Fiction. And that's about it for this evening. I thought we had a great conversation on this episode of Dudes Talking. Next week, I'm going to have George from cavdev.org. We're going to do a stream on Thursday in defense of Franklin against the Hoaxted researchers and Vindoff about how they're trying to say that Franklin did not exist, that it's fake news. It's not fake news. I've spent hours upon hours researching the Franklin scandal with Lawrence E. King, and we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk about why it's real. We're going to talk about why it's an insult to Gary Caradori's family and his legacy, of why they say it is a hoax. Because they always want to go on Vindoff and Hoaxhead. They always want to go, and they always want to criticize Alicia Owen and Troy Bonner and Danny King and Paul Bonacci. They want to go against their testimonies to just say that they're all liars, even though Alicia Owen never recanted and spent many years in prison, and did not recant her tale of abuse in the hands of Lawrence E. King and the Republican Party and the allegedly, many CMPers during the 1980s. So it is a spit in the face to those who were assaulted, those who were abused, and a spit in the face to the Caradori family and to the legacy of one of the true heroes. And there's very few R guys out there. But Gary Caradori was one of #R guys who fought for the truth and who died. Him and his son died in a plane crash because of the corruption, because of the cabal. And yeah, you don't hear a lot about these Q-tubers talk about Franklin. Why? Because it involves the Republican Party. And to them, partisan matters. But here, and we've read the Documents channel, it doesn't. We don't fall into the trap of the right-left paradigm as much as we possibly can. Not anymore. And that's it for this evening. Next week, I'm also going to cover as well the second part of the Steele dossier and a third part of the Council for National Policy Research that we have going on with that. I want to thank in the chat Boneless Rocker for being with us here this evening. I'm going to try to talk and do more in the chat. Still getting adjusted to live streaming, still not used to it yet. But that's about it for this evening. And as everything, till next time, always read the documents. Take care. God bless.